Hello. I want to talk about the three trigonometric ratios, sine, cosine, and tangent. And these ratios have to do with the angles, the acute angles of a right triangle, A and B, okay, in this case. And we'll put C here to represent the right angle, okay? So the trigonometric ratios are all about fractions. They're basically going to equal a fraction. And the first one we'll talk about is the sine, which is spelled sine, but you just need to write sine, S-I-N. So I know it looks a little funny, but that's the short way of writing sine. And so when you're finding the sine of an angle, the angle, at least for now, they need to be one of the two acute angles of a right triangle. We won't be finding the sine of angle C, which is the right angle. We're going to be finding the sine of one of the acute angles of this right triangle. So let me write this out. So if somebody says, what's the sine of A? Well, this is how it would be written, right? Sine of A. Now, by definition, the sine of A is the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse, which I'll put HYP. So I need to label things here a little bit more. I'll call this side C. It's like a lowercase c, and then I'll call this side B, lowercase b, and lowercase a. It's going to be easier to write out the fractions that way. So I'm referring to the sine of A, and by definition, the sine is always the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. Well, this is the hypotenuse, no matter what angle you're working with. So I'll put HYP here, okay? But the opposite depends on what angle you're working with. So angle A, if we're at angle A right here, then the opposite side is going to be this side right here. Okay, it's not the side at the bottom because that's not opposite the angle. And it can't be side C because that's the hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse is never going to be an opposite side. So the sine of A is the opposite, which is A, divided by the hypotenuse, which is C. That's it. Pretty simple. Let's try cosine. So the short way to write cosine is C-O-S, all lowercase, just like sine. And let's find the cosine of angle A. Well, by definition, the cosine is the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. Okay. Well, if we go back over here to angle A, we want to find the cosine of angle A. Well, we know what the hypotenuse is, and we know what the opposite side is. So that leaves B. B must be the adjacent side. So the adjacent side is B, and the hypotenuse is still C. Okay? So do you see where we are so far? We have the sine of A is the fraction A divided by C. That's the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. And then the cosine of A is B divided by C. It's the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse. Okay, there's one more trigonometric ratio, and this one does not use the hypotenuse. It's called the tangent. Okay, so, and the abbreviation for that, or I'm sorry, the short way to write that is tan, T-A-N. So what is the tangent of angle A? Well, by definition, the tangent is always the opposite side, so it uses the opposite side just like sine does, divided by the adjacent side. Oops, that should be a J right there, okay? It's the opposite divided by the adjacent side. So if we're at angle A here, the tangent is going to be the opposite, which is angle A, divided by B, the adjacent side. A divided by B. So those are the three trigonometric ratios. And a good way to remember them is using the word SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. So it's just a funny sounding word that you can remember. It's easy to remember, SOHCAHTOA. And it helps people to remember that the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. Okay? I'll have another video that shows some examples of using this.